Assassination has been a key part of Israel's foreign policy, even before the country existed. Long before Mossad, Zionist militias targeted officials who stood in the way of creating a Jewish state, using hit-and-run tactics to eliminate their enemies. Over the decades, Israel refined its methods, from poisoning toothpaste to detonating pages, carrying out operations with ruthless precision. Some changed the course of history, while others backfired spectacularly, like in Norway, 1973, when Mossad agents killed the wrong man, only to be arrested and exposed, sparking a diplomatic crisis. This is the secret history of Mossad assassinations, where covert warfare meets geopolitics, and where the line between success and disaster is razor thin. Targeted assassinations as a tool of foreign policy long predate Israel's establishment. Zionist militias, Irgun, Haganah, and Lehi, used violence to advance the creation of a Jewish state, often targeting those they saw as obstacles to their cause. Their operations, typically unsophisticated hit-and-run attacks, aimed to avenge Jewish casualties or eliminate key officials. One such operation targeted Tom Wilkins, commander of the Jewish unit at the Criminal Investigation Department (CID) under the British Mandate for Palestine. A relentless tracker of Jewish underground groups, Wilkins was patient, calculating, and highly effective. In 1944, Lehi assassins David Shomron and Yaakov Banai shot him 11 times in Jerusalem before vanishing into the crowd. Yitzhak Shamir, Lehi's commander and a future Israeli prime minister, escalated these assassinations. His targets extended beyond British officials in Palestine, reaching figures abroad who opposed Zionist ambitions. Among them was Lord Moyne, Britain's minister resident in the Middle East and a vocal opponent of Jewish immigration to Palestine. On Shamir's orders, Lehi gunmen ambushed Moyne outside his Cairo home in 1944, shooting him multiple times. The assassins, Eliyahu Betzuri and Eliyahu Hakim, attempted to escape on bicycles, but were quickly captured and later hanged. British intelligence viewed Zionist militancy as a major threat. MI5 files reveal that Lehi even attempted to assassinate British cabinet members with letter bombs, though none detonated. By the end of 1947, 176 British Mandate personnel had been killed by Jewish militias, mostly in these rudimentary hit-and-run attacks. On November 29, 1947, the UN voted to partition Palestine, establishing a Jewish homeland. The division would not take effect for 6 months, but Arab attacks began the next day. Hassan Salameh, leading 500 guerrillas, launched a wave of ambushes and raids against Jewish targets. Within 2 weeks, 48 Jews had been killed. At the time, Israel was not yet a state and lacked a unified military. Zionist militias attempted to respond, but their fighters were poorly trained and severely under-equipped. To counter their disadvantage, Haganah turned to targeted assassinations. Under Operation Starling, it identified 23 Arab political figures for elimination, with Salameh as the top priority. Isser Harel, a future head of Mossad, sought to modernize the effort by tapping phone lines and planting listening devices to track targets. However, most assassinations remained unsophisticated hit-and-run attacks with low success rates. Despite multiple attempts, Salameh survived and was ultimately killed in combat in June 1948. Operation Starling largely failed due to poor intelligence and flawed execution. Just months after Israel's independence, a high-profile assassination severely damaged its diplomatic standing. Folke Bernadotte, a Swedish diplomat and UN mediator in Palestine, proposed a tentative peace plan that met fierce Zionist opposition. Many accused him of attempting to redraw Israel's borders to shift the balance of power. On September 17, 1948, under orders from Yitzhak Shamir, Lehi operatives ambushed Bernadotte's UN vehicle in Jerusalem. They shot out its tires before Yehoshua Cohen fired a MP-40 submachine gun, hitting him 6 times. The assassination triggered an immediate and severe diplomatic backlash. United Nations Security Council Resolution 57 condemned it as a cowardly act of terrorism, while Sweden blamed Israeli agents and denounced the inadequate investigation. It also campaigned, unsuccessfully, against Israel's admission to the UN. Though Sweden formally recognized the new state in 1950, relations remained strained for years. To preserve Israel's monopoly on power, David Ben-Gurion disbanded Lehi, but despite international outrage, no one was ever charged, and the case was quietly closed. Israel's War of Independence ended with an armistice in 1949, but unofficial fighting continued throughout the 1950s, with the Egyptians using Palestinian Fedayeen militants to wage a proxy war against Israel. Operating under the cover of darkness, the Fedayeen infiltrated Israeli territory, sabotaging key infrastructure, destroying water pipes, train tracks, and roads, while also carrying out deadly attacks on civilians. Between 1951 and 1955, they killed 1,000 Israelis. Unable to strike directly at Egypt, Chief of General Staff Moshe Dayan devised a two-pronged strategy, both highly controversial. The first involved targeted assassinations of key Egyptian operatives responsible for organizing the Palestinian Fedayeen. The second was retaliatory raids designed to impose a high price for Jewish blood. In 1953, after Fedayeen militants murdered a young woman and 2 children in Yehud, southeast of Tel Aviv, Israel launched a retaliatory raid. The newly formed Unit 101, responsible for cross-border retribution missions, was led by future Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Their target, Chibia, a village in the West Bank. Sharon led 130 commandos armed with 1,500 pounds of explosives. They destroyed much of the village, killing at least 69 people, mostly women and children. The world reacted with outrage. The UN Security Council condemned the raid, and the US suspended aid to Israel for violating the armistice agreement. Next, Israel set its sights on the Egyptian officers orchestrating the Fedayeen attacks. Dayan convinced Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion to authorize the elimination of Colonel Mustafa Hafez, the mastermind behind Egypt's proxy war. The method, a booby-trapped book. A rigged copy of Achtung Panzer by German tank strategist Heinz Guderian was delivered to Hafez. When he opened it, the device detonated, fatally wounding him. This marked the beginning of Israel's doctrine of targeted assassinations. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, Jewish survivors and Israeli leaders sought justice for the atrocities committed against their people. Mossad, alongside independent Nazi hunters, compiled a list of high-profile war criminals and began tracking them across the globe. One of their most infamous targets was Herberts Cukurs, a Latvian pilot and Nazi collaborator known as the Butcher of Riga. Responsible for the deaths of at least 30,000 Latvian Jews, Cukurs had escaped to Brazil, where he built a new life as a tour guide, flying visitors over the Amazon rainforest. His past might have remained buried had a Holocaust survivor not recognized his face in a magazine and attempted to alert authorities. Mossad devised a plan to eliminate him, initially posing as tourists and offering him a lucrative job flying them over the Amazon, intending to kill him mid-air and dispose of his body. But Cukurs, perhaps sensing danger, declined the offer. Determined to finish the job, Mossad lured him to Uruguay under the pretense of launching an aviation business where he was ambushed and shot multiple times, ending his life. Another high-priority target was Alois Brunner, a key figure in the deportation of over 100,000 European Jews from Austria, Greece, France, and Slovakia to concentration camps. After the war, he fled to Syria, where he became a security consultant for the Syrian government. Mossad attempted to assassinate Brunner through letter bombs. In 1961, a parcel bomb cost him an eye, and in 1980, another severed the fingers of his left hand. Yet despite his injuries, Brunner remained under Syrian protection until his reported death in Damascus in 2001 at the age of 89. Mossad's most significant success in hunting Nazi war criminals came in 1960 with the capture of Adolf Eichmann, a chief architect of Hitler's final solution. Having lived in Buenos Aires under the alias Ricardo Clement for a decade, Eichmann was finally tracked down by Mossad agents. In April 1960, a Mossad team arrived in Argentina and conducted extensive surveillance, learning that Eichmann took the same bus home every evening. On May 11th, agents captured him near his home in San Fernando, an industrial suburb of Buenos Aires. To extract him undetected, they sedated Eichmann and smuggled him aboard an El Al aircraft, disguised as a crew member from an Israeli delegation attending Argentina's 150th anniversary celebrations of the May Revolution. Eichmann was taken to Israel, where he was tried on 15 counts of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against the Jewish people. Found guilty, he was sentenced to death by hanging. Despite these missions, Nazi hunting was never Mossad's top priority. Facing existential threats from neighbors, Israeli leaders prioritized national security over retribution, resulting in few Nazi assassinations. A major theme in Israel's foreign policy has been preventing enemy nations from acquiring nuclear and advanced missile capabilities. One of the lesser-known Mossad operations involved a Cold War-era scare when Egypt recruited German scientists to develop advanced surface-to-surface missiles. On the morning of July 21, 1962, Israeli officials were stunned as Egyptian newspapers announced the successful launch of 4 surface-to-surface missiles. With this, Egypt had gained the ability to strike targets as far north as Beirut. The revelation was a humiliating intelligence failure for Mossad. German scientists, some of whom had worked for the Nazi regime, had secretly helped Egypt make a technological leap, catching Israel entirely off guard. Mossad chief Issa Harel immediately placed the agency on emergency footing and launched Operation Damocles, a covert campaign targeting German scientists and technicians to disrupt Egypt's missile program. Israeli agents began breaking into Egyptian embassies across Europe, photographing sensitive documents. They uncovered that 35 highly experienced German scientists had relocated to Egypt in 1961. Among them, Dr. Eugen Sänger and Wolfgang Pilz, both internationally renowned for their expertise in missile technology. Harel believed that without these scientists, Egypt's missile program would collapse. His strategy was clear: eliminate key figures and sow fear among the rest. One of the targets, Dr. Heinz Krug, was kidnapped and sedated in France. He was secretly flown to Israel and imprisoned in a Mossad black site where interrogators sought intelligence on Egypt's missile program. Mossad decided that letter and parcel bombs were the most effective way to eliminate the German scientists. One key target was Wolfgang Pilz, who was divorcing his wife to be with his secretary. Unfortunately, the letter bomb intended for him was mistakenly delivered to his wife. When she opened it, the explosion blew off her fingers, blinded her in one eye, and knocked out her teeth. Egyptian intelligence responded swiftly, tightening security around the scientists. Another failed assassination attempt on Dr. Hans Kleinwachter, an expert in missile guidance systems, resulted in an embarrassing shootout in the streets, further exposing Mossad's operations. Beyond assassinations, Israeli Prime Minister Levi Eshkol applied diplomatic pressure on West German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, urging him to intervene. Meanwhile, Mossad also bribed German scientists to abandon the program, offering financial incentives and safe relocation. The carrot-and-stick approach proved effective. One by one, the German scientists abandoned the project, leading to the collapse of Egypt's missile program. This marked Israel's first successful campaign to prevent a regional rival from acquiring advanced weapons systems. On October 10, 1959, Yasser Arafat and Abu Jihad founded the Palestine Liberation Organization. Its early attacks were amateurish, but the group quickly refined its tactics, launching more frequent and audacious operations each year. For years, the PLO remained a low priority for Israel, which was focused on larger threats from Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Palestinian terror groups were seen as less urgent in comparison. This changed after Israel's victory in the Six-Day War. Flush with newfound support and resources, Arafat and Abu Jihad escalated attacks, launching a wave of bombings in Gaza and the West Bank, targeting civilians. PLO operatives and supply lines spanned multiple European countries, but Mossad, despite knowing about planned attacks, was restricted from acting there. The Israeli Prime Minister feared the diplomatic fallout of conducting assassinations on European soil. The Munich massacre, where Palestinian militants kidnapped and killed 11 Israeli athletes as German forces hesitated to intervene, marked a turning point in this policy. Golda Meir authorized Operation Wrath of God, a mission to eliminate the perpetrators wherever they were found. The first target was Wael Zweiter, a Palestinian diplomat at the Libyan embassy in Rome, suspected of smuggling weapons for terrorist attacks. Mossad agents waited for him to return from dinner and shot him 12 times. The next target was Mahmoud Hamshari, Black September's second-in-command and one of the chief architects of the Munich massacre. Mossad infiltrated his apartment in Paris, planting a bomb inside his telephone's marble base. On December 8, 1972, a Mossad agent, posing as a journalist, phoned Hamshari's apartment and confirmed his identity. The moment Hamshari identified himself, the agent signaled his team, who sent a detonation signal down the phone line, triggering a bomb hidden inside the device. A similar operation targeted Hussein al-Bashir, a PLO representative in Cyprus. As he turned off the lights in his hotel room in Nicosia, a bomb planted under his bed was remotely detonated, killing him instantly and destroying the room. All in all, 14 Palestinian militants were eliminated over the course of a year. Operation Wrath of God was supplemented by Operation Spring of Youth, shifting from targeted assassinations in Europe to direct military action against high-ranking PLO officers in Beirut. A Mossad asset provided Israel with intelligence on 4 senior PLO officials, including their home addresses. They lived in 2 high-rise buildings on Verdun Street, Beirut, in close proximity to each other. To confirm the intel, Mossad sent a female operative posing as a writer. Arriving in January 1973, she befriended locals and took photographs of key locations under the guise of researching a TV series. The mission was led by Ehud Barak, future Israeli Chief of General Staff and Prime Minister, who at the time commanded Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite commando unit. The plan involved Flotilla 13, the Israeli naval commandos, who would land on the Lebanese coast and link up with Mossad agents already in Lebanon. From there, the team would drive to Verdun Street, eliminate the PLO targets, and escape back to Israel. On April 6, 1973, 6 Mossad operatives entered Beirut using European passports, each arriving from different airports to avoid detection. The operation commenced on April 9th, as Israeli missile boats cut their engines 12 miles off the Lebanese coast, allowing troops from multiple units to deploy undetected. To catch their targets off guard, the commandos disguised themselves as women, creating a split second of confusion during encounters with PLO operatives. Entering the high-rises unchallenged, they eliminated 3 senior PLO leaders, Mohammed Youssef al-Najjar, Kamal Adwan, and Kamal Nasser. A firefight erupted, killing dozens of additional militants, while Israeli forces recovered valuable intelligence documents. The mission came at a cost. 2 Israeli soldiers were killed. Not all Mossad operations went as planned. One of its most infamous failures occurred during the hunt for Ali Hassan Salameh, the operations chief of Black September and a key figure behind the Munich massacre. Acting on faulty intelligence, Mossad agents mistakenly identified a man they believed to be Ali and tracked him to Lillehammer, Norway. On July 21, 1973, Mossad operatives followed their suspect as he left his apartment, boarded a bus, and went to a movie theater. As soon as he stepped out, they ambushed him, firing 8 shots before escaping. Only the next day, when the story made headlines, did they realize their mistake. The man they had killed was Ahmed Bouchiki, a Moroccan waiter with no ties to terrorism. He had been living a quiet life in Lillehammer with his Norwegian wife, Toril, who was 7 months pregnant at the time. The killing sent shockwaves through Norway and quickly spiraled into a diplomatic disaster for Israel. Norwegian authorities swiftly tracked down the Mossad operatives, uncovering safe houses and intelligence networks across Europe. The arrested agents were put on trial, drawing international attention. The court found Mossad responsible for the assassination and sentenced 5 operatives to prison terms ranging from 1 to 5 years. But behind closed doors, negotiations between Israel and Norway secured their quiet return home. For decades, Israel refused to publicly acknowledge its role in the killing. However, in January 1996, Prime Minister Shimon Peres stated that while Israel would not officially take responsibility, it would consider financial compensation. The Israeli government reached a negotiated settlement with Bouchiki's widow and daughter, ultimately agreeing to pay $283,000, split between them. An official statement expressed Israel's sorrow over Bouchiki's unfortunate death, though it stopped short of an apology. Despite the failed operation in Norway, Mossad continued its pursuit of Ali Hassan Salameh. On January 22, 1979, after tracking him to Beirut, agents planted a remote-controlled car bomb along his usual route. When Ali's convoy passed, the bomb detonated, killing him along with 4 bodyguards and 4 bystanders, and injuring 18 others. In May 1977, the Labour Party lost the election, bringing Likud to power under Menachem Begin, who granted intelligence agencies carte blanche for death warrants and targeted assassinations. One of Mossad's highest priority targets was Wadie Haddad, a senior figure in the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, he orchestrated multiple hijackings, including the infamous Entebbe hijacking. Rather than a military raid or a direct hit, Mossad opted for a low-signature assassination, a method designed to leave no trace of foul play. If successful, Israel could eliminate a key figure without the diplomatic fallout. Haddad's toothpaste was replaced with an identical tube infused with a slow-acting toxin developed by the Israel Institute for Biological Research in Ness Ziona. With each use, microscopic amounts entered his bloodstream through the mucous membranes in his mouth, accumulating over time. Soon, Haddad developed severe abdominal pain. Doctors in Baghdad suspected poisoning but lacked proof. Seeking help, Yasser Arafat turned to the Stasi, East Germany's secret police, who arranged for Haddad's transfer to a high-security hospital in East Berlin. Despite medical intervention, his condition worsened. After 10 days of suffering, he died on March 29, 1978. The operation set a precedent. Low-signature assassinations became a favored tactic, allowing Mossad to eliminate high-value targets while maintaining plausible deniability. Abu Jihad, co-founder of the PLO, topped Israel's most wanted list in the 1980s. While Yasser Arafat had become the public face of the organization, Abu Jihad was its military strategist, orchestrating attacks against Israel. Though the PLO had started as an amateur force, it evolved into a sophisticated group capable of striking Israel by land, air, or sea. For instance, on March 11, 1978, 11 PLO operatives left Lebanon by boat, landing near Kibbutz Ma'agan Michael, south of Haifa. They hijacked a bus on the coastal highway, killing 35 Israelis, including 13 children. Known as the Coastal Road Massacre, it was one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in Israel's history. Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin ordered the IDF to plan the assassination of Abu Jihad, who had settled in Tunis, Tunisia. The plan was straightforward. Commandos would land on the Tunisian shore in dinghies, raid the PLO compound, and kill Abu Jihad. At 1,280 miles from Israel, it was a high-risk operation that would need to be planned carefully. Codenamed Operation Introductory Lesson, the mission was led by Ehud Barak, the IDF Deputy Chief of Staff. A Mossad team arrived ahead of the operation to map routes from the beach to Abu Jihad's home, monitor his neighborhood, track his movements, and tap his phone lines. On April 14th, 6 Mossad operatives arrived in Tunis on separate flights from Europe. They rented 2 Volkswagen vans and a Peugeot sedan to transport Sayeret Matkal commandos from the shore to Abu Jihad's house. Offshore, an Israeli submarine, Gal, and an Air Force Boeing 707 acted as communication relays, intercepting Tunisian radio frequencies. Under cover of darkness, 26 Sayeret Matkal soldiers, led by Yoav Gallant, a future Israeli defense minister, landed on the shore in rubber dinghies. They moved quickly toward Abu Jihad's home. Inside, Abu Jihad was in his bedroom with his wife, baby son, and teenage daughter when Israeli commandos stormed in. He was shot 52 times, twice by each commando. To cover their escape, Israeli operatives jammed police communications and fed false reports, diverting security forces while the commandos withdrew without resistance. Abu Jihad's assassination was a major blow to the PLO. As one of its top military leaders, his death sparked riots across the Palestinian territories, leaving at least a dozen dead in the worst outbreak of violence since the Intifada began. International condemnation followed. The US State Department called the operation an act of political assassination, while the UN Security Council passed Resolution 611 denouncing aggression against Tunisia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, without explicitly naming Israel. Like the Egyptian missile crisis, Mossad devised a plan to sabotage Saddam Hussein's nuclear ambitions. At the time, Saddam was developing nuclear weapons with a multi-billion-dollar budget, determined to make Iraq a nuclear power. In the 1970s, French President Jacques Chirac signed several deals with Iraq, including the sale of a nuclear reactor, later named Osirak by the Iraqis. The agreement was highly profitable. Iraq paid France $2 billion as well as granting favorable oil trade agreements. To disrupt the program, Israel resorted to the same strategy it had used against Egypt, targeting the scientists behind the project. At the top of the list was Yahya al-Mashhad, an Egyptian nuclear engineering professor recruited by Saddam. While in Paris, Mashhad dismissed his aides, claiming he wanted to go shopping. Instead, he invited a prostitute to his hotel room. Mossad agents waited outside, and after the woman left, they entered the room and bludgeoned him to death. The next target, Salman Rashid, mysteriously fell ill in Geneva and later died of poisoning. Meanwhile, other Iraqi scientists received death threats, warning them to resign or face assassination. Some quit, slowing progress, but the program continued. With assassinations proving insufficient, Israel turned to direct military action. The plan, Operation Opera, was launched while Iraq was still at war with Iran, providing an opportunity to strike. 8 F-16 fighter jets took off from Etzion Air Base in Israeli-occupied Sinai, escorted by 6 F-15s for cover, with a modified Boeing aircraft providing mid-air refueling. The jets flew unchallenged to Iraq, with Israeli pilots posing as a lost Saudi patrol over Jordan and mimicking Jordanian radio signals over Saudi Arabia to avoid detection. Upon reaching Osirak, the jets unleashed their payload, bombing the reactor and killing 10 Iraqi soldiers along with 1 French technician. The attack sparked global condemnation. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations, and even the United States denounced the strike, with the US suspending the delivery of 4 F-16 fighter jets to Israel in response. Undeterred, Saddam doubled down on his nuclear ambitions. The project expanded from 400 to 7,000 scientists, with massive budget increases and generous salaries to attract top talent. One of the key figures in Iraq's missile development was Gerald Bull, a Canadian rocket scientist who had worked with NASA and the US Army. Despite warnings, he dismissed Mossad's threats. On March 22, 1990, a Mossad hit squad tracked him to Brussels, where he was shot 5 times in the head at point-blank range with silenced pistols. Soon after, his photo was sent to other scientists, a final warning to abandon the program. Thus, Iraq was prevented from acquiring advanced missile technology and nuclear weapons, a successful use of targeted assassinations to achieve a strategic objective. At home, Palestinian terror groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad posed a relentless threat to Israel, unleashing waves of suicide bombings that left scores of civilians dead. One of the masterminds behind these attacks was Yahya Ayyash, Hamas's chief bomb maker. Known as the Engineer, he revolutionized suicide bombing techniques, orchestrating attacks that claimed nearly 90 Israeli lives. Determined to stop him, Shin Bet tracked Ayyash down and planted explosives inside his mobile phone. When he answered a call from his father, the device detonated, killing him instantly. In the 1990s, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin backed the Oslo process, advocating a gradual withdrawal from the occupied territories. In opposition to the accords, Hamas and Islamic Jihad escalated attacks, while the Palestinian Authority often refused to clamp down on their activities, using the groups as leverage in negotiations. In response, Israel intensified its counter-terrorism efforts. Initially, Mossad and Shin Bet focused on eliminating the operatives who carried out attacks, but this approach had clear limitations. Suicide bombers were easily replaced. As one Hamas spokesperson admitted, even women were now carrying out bombings. Recognizing that targeting bombers alone was ineffective, Shin Bet chief Avi Dichter shifted strategy. The real power lay not in the attackers, but in the network that enabled them: recruiters, bomb makers, couriers, and financiers. While bombers could be replaced within days, operatives higher up the chain were far harder to train, making them far more valuable targets. Along with low-level strategic operatives, Israeli forces also began systematically eliminating key figures. Hussein Abayat, a Fatah operative responsible for multiple shootings, was killed in an airstrike by Apache helicopters. Iyad Haradin, an Islamic Jihad commander in Jenin, died when he answered a payphone rigged with explosives. Osama al-Jawabra of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades was assassinated in a similar operation. Not every mission went as planned. Khaled Mashal, a senior Hamas leader, was operating from Jordan, which had made peace with Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu authorized a covert assassination, insisting on a method that left no Israeli fingerprints. The plan involved spraying Mashal with a lethal nerve agent, levofentanyl, via an ultrasound device disguised in an operative's hand. A Mossad doctor carried an antidote in case of accidental exposure. But the mission failed. Jordanian police caught the Mossad agents in the act and arrested them. With its operatives in custody, Israel had no choice but to negotiate. To secure their release, Israel was forced to provide the antidote, saving Mashal's life just moments after trying to kill him. The diplomatic fallout was severe. Jordan suspended ties, and Israel was forced to release Hamas founder Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, along with dozens of Palestinian prisoners, including convicted terrorists. Israel would eventually settle the score. In 2004, an AH-64 Apache fired Hellfire missiles at Sheikh Ahmed Yassin as he left morning prayers in Gaza. To mask the sound of the approaching strike, Israeli F-16s roared overhead moments before, ensuring no warning. The assassination drew international condemnation, with UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan among the critics. In Gaza, 200,000 people attended Yassin's funeral. Targeted assassinations disrupted terrorist networks, eliminating key figures and slowing their operations. But Hamas and Islamic Jihad remained intact, continuing their attacks. Following the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Israel faced a persistent threat from the Iranian-backed Shia Crescent, a network of proxies encircling the country. These included groups in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and most critically, Hezbollah in Lebanon. At the same time, Iran's pursuit of a nuclear bomb made targeted assassinations a key tool in Israel's strategy for containing Iran. Imad Mughniyeh, Hezbollah's chief of staff, was a mastermind of its military and intelligence operations and a key target for Mossad. A highly elusive tactician, he orchestrated some of the deadliest attacks against Israeli and Western targets, refining suicide bombings into a devastating weapon throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. After Israel assassinated Hezbollah's Secretary-General Abbas Musawi in 1994, leadership passed to 32-year-old Hassan Nasrallah. The task of revenge fell to Imad Mughniyeh, who saw retaliation as more than just launching rockets. To him, the battlefield was global. A wave of international attacks followed. Israeli security officer Ehud Sadan was assassinated in Turkey, and soon after, a car bomb exploded outside the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, killing 4 Israelis and 5 Argentine Jews. Investigations exposed Hezbollah's network of sleeper cells worldwide, ready to strike on command. Fearing the scale of escalation, Israel refrained from targeting top Hezbollah leaders for years. On July 18, 1994, Imad struck again. A van packed with explosives detonated outside the Argentine Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, killing 85 people. The destruction was so severe that it took weeks to recover the bodies. He became Mossad's most wanted target and one of the world's most wanted terrorists, with a $25 million bounty on his head. Catching him would be no easy task. The CIA described Mughniyeh as one of the most intelligent and capable operatives they had ever encountered. He constantly changed his routes, switched vehicles daily, and never made appointments over the phone. It would take another 14 years to track him down. Israeli and US intelligence followed him to Damascus, Syria, where he operated under heavy protection. On February 12, 2008, Mughniyeh attended a reception at the Iranian embassy, marking the 29th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. Around 10:30 p.m. he left and walked toward his Mitsubishi Pajero. As he passed the vehicle, a bomb hidden in the spare tire detonated. The blast killed only Imad Mughniyeh, leaving the surroundings untouched. His death shocked Hezbollah and Syria. After 30 years of evading capture, the mastermind was finally gone. On the 10th anniversary of his death, Iranian General Qasem Soleimani called him the legend of our time, saying the grief of his loss was second only to that of Khomeini. Assassinating Imad Mughniyeh was a major victory for Mossad, but Israel's challenges were far from over. Iran continued pouring billions into its proxy groups while making steady progress toward a nuclear bomb. For Meir Dagan, who led Mossad for a decade, stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions became a key priority. His approach was multi-pronged: diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, supporting dissidents, disrupting supply chains, and most effectively, eliminating key scientists behind the program. On January 14, 2007, Dr. Ardeshir Hossein-Pour, a 46-year-old nuclear scientist working at the Isfahan uranium enrichment plant, was mysteriously found dead, later revealed to be poisoning. 3 years later, on January 12, 2010, another scientist, Masoud Ali Mohammadi, stepped outside his home in northern Tehran. As he reached for his car door, a booby-trapped motorcycle parked nearby exploded, killing him instantly. Cyber warfare became another key weapon against Iran's nuclear program. Stuxnet, a sophisticated computer virus, infiltrated Iran's Natanz enrichment facility, tricking operators into believing everything was running normally while secretly manipulating centrifuge speeds. By rapidly accelerating and then slowing them down, the virus induced excessive vibrations, causing the centrifuges to malfunction and self-destruct. The most technologically advanced killing, however, was the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the chief architect of Iran's nuclear program. Unlike previous operations, this hit required no on-site operatives. Instead, Mossad deployed an AI-powered remote-controlled machine gun mounted on an advanced robotic system. The entire setup, weighing nearly a ton, was smuggled into Iran in pieces and carefully reassembled. On the day of the attack, a truck equipped with a camera and explosives was stationed at the ambush site. When Fakhrizadeh's convoy approached, the gun fired 15 shots, killing him instantly. The entire operation lasted under a minute. Moments later, the truck self-destructed, leaving behind nothing but questions. Not all of Mossad's operations were as successful as its campaign against Iran's nuclear program. The assassination of Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, a Hamas officer responsible for weapons procurement, sparked international outcry and was a significant diplomatic setback. Mahmoud had traveled to Dubai, staying at the Al Bustan Rotana Hotel, where he was coordinating an arms shipment from Iran to Sudan, which would eventually be smuggled into Gaza via Egypt. A key part of Israel's defense against Hamas is isolating it within Gaza and preventing weapons from entering through Egypt. To eliminate Mahmoud, Mossad sent a hit squad to Dubai, with operatives arriving on separate flights using fake British, Irish, French, and Australian passports. The team tracked him to his hotel, broke into his room, and injected him with a lethal toxin, making his death appear natural. Before leaving, they locked the door in a way that made it look as if it had been sealed from the inside. The next day, hotel staff discovered his body, and Hamas immediately suspected an assassination. Hamas contacted Dubai Police Chief Lieutenant General Dahi Khalfan Tamim, claiming Mossad was behind the killing. The UAE quickly identified the operatives using extensive CCTV footage and went public with the findings. Images of Mossad agents were broadcast globally, prompting Britain, Ireland, France, and Australia to expel Israeli operatives and suspend intelligence cooperation. Dubai also demanded the arrest of Mir Dagan, turning what was meant to be a covert operation into a diplomatic crisis. Despite setbacks, targeted assassinations helped contain the threat of terror groups, but never eradicated them, as Israelis would tragically learn on October 7th. Following the October 7th attack, targeted assassinations became central to Israel's strategy against Hamas and Hezbollah. Intelligence officials compiled a list of Hamas leaders whom they declared were living on borrowed time. Most Hamas officials were killed in airstrikes on Gaza, but Ismail Haniyeh, the group's political leader, was harder to eliminate. Haniyeh primarily lived in Qatar, but an assassination attempt there risked derailing hostage negotiations mediated by Doha. Israeli planners explored alternative locations, including Turkey, Russia, and Iran, but concerns over backlash from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Russian President Vladimir Putin left Iran as the only viable option. Mossad planned the assassination to take place on July 31, 2024, whilst Haniyeh was attending the inauguration of Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Haniyeh's repeated stays at the same IRGC guest house in northern Tehran made the operation easier to plan. Prior to the assassination, agents covertly installed an IED near Haniyeh's bed. Shortly before the planned detonation, the AC unit in Haniyeh's room broke down, and the Hamas leader left his room in order to request assistance. He was gone for so long that Israel feared that Haniyeh was being moved to a different room, which would have scuttled the entire operation. Unfortunately for Haniyeh, the AC was fixed, and he returned to his original room where at 1:30 a.m. the IED detonated, blowing a hole through the outer wall of his guest room, shaking the entire compound. The assassination was not just a blow to Hamas, it was a humiliation for Iran as it happened on their soil, under their protection. The most sophisticated of Mossad's assassinations was the Hezbollah pager attack, a covert operation years in the making. For over a decade, Hezbollah unknowingly purchased Israeli-made communication devices, walkie-talkies and pagers, booby-trapped with explosives. Two former Israeli intelligence agents revealed that Mossad orchestrated a long-term deception, funneling thousands of rigged devices into Hezbollah through shell companies that concealed their Israeli origins. Mossad discovered that Hezbollah was sourcing pagers from the Taiwanese company Gold Apollo. In response, Israeli operatives established a fake company, producing near-identical pagers under the same branding but embedding them with explosives. The booby-trapped devices were designed to detonate upon receiving an incoming message. Mossad tested different ringtones, choosing one urgent enough to ensure instant attention, increasing the likelihood of detonation at close range. On September 17, 2024, Mossad remotely detonated thousands of Hezbollah-owned pagers, triggering chaos across Lebanon. At least 39 people were killed within the first 2 days, including Hezbollah members, senior officials, and civilians. Over 3,400 people suffered severe injuries, including facial wounds, missing fingers, and abdominal trauma from proximity to the devices. Even Iran's ambassador to Lebanon, Mojtaba Amini, was among the injured. Though the detonations killed some lower-ranking commanders, their main impact was crippling Hezbollah's communications, undermining security, and sowing chaos within the organization. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah came just days after the pager attack, relying not on sophisticated tactics, but sheer brute force. On September 27, 2024, at 6:20 p.m., F-59 jets from Israel's 69th Fighter Squadron dropped nearly 100 bombs on Hezbollah's underground headquarters in central Beirut, killing Nasrallah, who had led the group for 32 years. To penetrate the facility, the attack included GBU-31 bunker buster bombs, designed to reach deep beneath the large residential building concealing Hezbollah's command center. Lebanon's health ministry later reported 33 killed and 195 injured in the strike. The pager attack, Nasrallah's assassination, and the elimination of senior Hezbollah commanders forced a swift ceasefire, with Hezbollah retreating north of the Litani River. Assassinations and covert operations were key to Israel's victory, directly shaping the outcome of the conflict. For decades, Israel has relied on targeted assassinations to eliminate threats, disrupt enemies, and shape the battlefield in its favor. Some operations were tactical masterpieces, others diplomatic disasters. But with each hit comes a question: do assassinations make Israel safer, or do they create more enemies than they eliminate? I have been your host, Albert. If you have enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.